Thank you, Kathy, and thank you very much for having me. I've already had 3 really great days here visiting my students and watching them perform, which has been just an excellent blast. So yeah, I'm really grateful. I am Bridget Moser. That's me. I am an artist who mostly makes live performances and video works. When I talk about my work, I do a pretty broad overview and show like probably lots of clips or stills from things. But if there's anything that you are curious to know more about, pretty much all of it is on the line if you'd like to watch it. Not all of it is good, but all of it is there. So there you go. I am also an artist that appreciates different formats. This is something important to know about me. Another important thing to know about me as of recent years is that I am also a slow runner. I believe that every practice helps sustain the others. So being a slow runner, it also means that I spend a lot of my spare time doing something I'm not really good at. And that has helped me to cultivate like a better tolerance of discomfort, and also a thicker skin when I do things that aren't so good. Because sometimes you make work and it's not so good, but I would rather take risks and experiment and kind of flop than not try something new. It also helps me learn new things about myself, such as the fact that my hand does this when I am fatigued. So like I said, I make performances. The kinds of performances that I make are a little bit peculiar or particular. I often work with inanimate objects, often household objects, but sometimes just other things that don't necessarily make sense. The performances don't really follow like a narrative structure. They're made up of several short scenes that change very abruptly and kind of without warning. Some of them are composed just of gestures with sound. Some of them are made up of movement. Some of them focus on interacting in specific ways with these different things. And I also talk a lot. Sometimes my work seems like it's not planned at all, but it is actually all very scripted. So I'm always working from something very predetermined. I'm not improvising. And I'm performing alongside an audio track that has kind of all of my cues within it. And so I'm just kind of going along with it as I go. We'll get into some more detail soon. I also make videos. I like having this other way of mediating my ideas or what I'm thinking about, because I think visually it allows me to work in different ways and kind of focusing more on different materials or gestures that don't read in the same way that they do in a performance. And so these videos also typically like involve me. There's a recurring theme here. There's a lot of me in all of this, but yeah, so I also perform for the camera, and usually I'm the only person who might be present in given scenarios. I also sometimes make static arrangements of things, but I am not that good at that, and I'm still figuring it out, so I will probably just not really talk about it that much to Mel. Sorry. Some other important things to know about what's important to me in my work. One really kind of key element is like a combo of humor and cathartic emotions, because I think of both of these as strategies that can destabilize the illusion that things have fixed meanings. So like, if we look at humor theory, for example, if you look at how like many jokes are constructed, the general idea is that, you're taking something that's very familiar and twisting it in some way, and this generates a sort of surprising moment, and that surprise is like what makes us laugh. So yeah, trying to take these things that we might consider givens and kind of turning them a little bit to create this like pleasurable experience, hopefully, or emotional. I also, another important part is that my body is essential material in a lot of my work, and that my work is mostly inherently impermanent and generally very unprofitable. But I do think I should get paid to do it, but I just don't, it's not like a product, let's say. It's also important to me to work with points of reference that can act as different forms of shorthand for different audiences. So I like to steal, let's say, from different, very different kinds of sources, because I don't presume that like my audience has any specific background of knowledge about performance art or anything like that, and so I want to like offer something that might be more recognizable or familiar, that someone feels like they might get it, and so then they might come with me into other murkier, freakier material and feel like it's worth sticking with it for the ride. And finally, the only truly original thing that I should never produce is my own life. So a lot of the starting point for me is just like thinking about my own experience of the world and what I think about that, and then trying to, in some way, like, mediate that, because it's often something that I have no other way of thinking through or talking about. Like, this weird stuff that I do is the best way I can make sense of it. But even this thought in and of itself is not an original thought. The person who actually said this, the only truly original thing in this world is your own life, is Hideaki Anno, who created possibly the best show, Neon Genesis Evangelion, which is a mecha anime. I don't know if anyone in this room has watched it. But like on its surface, it's like, oh, this is like a giant robots fighting angels. Great show. But if you actually like dig deeper into what is happening in the show, what it is that this man in his mid-30s who grew up in the context of post-war Japan is going through like a depressive episode in the mid-90s and starts reading existential philosophy and psychoanalytic theory for the first time, and has created the greatest TV show of all time. I won't spoil it more, but I'll just say like maybe watch it. So speaking of lives, I'll get into my life. I would say that many of my simple dreams have already come true, such as, well, I actually literally never thought this would happen, to create this image of myself and Dr. Phil, who's a horrible person, but nevertheless, I can feel proud of this. Many of my simple dreams have come true. I would say I never dreamed of being a performance artist, though, even though I showed somewhat of an early passion for performing as a child. And so I've often kind of like wondered where this came from, this like kind of earlier in my life aversion to this medium that is now like the most important to me came from. And so I'm pretty sure the first example I can think of like a reference to performance art being made that I experienced was this episode of Boy Meets World, where Corinne and Topanga have a class assignment, and she says like, I don't want to do it the normal way. I think we should do like performance art. And she's like written this poem about the ozone layer, and there's like a dance that she does, and then she covers her face with lipstick, and it's frankly something I might consider doing now in my work. But Corey is like, oh my God, kid, I'd rather die, etc. And so what I understood from this is that performance art is embarrassing. The joke is on the performer. The audience is going to laugh at you for all the wrong reasons. Another kind of early example for me is in the 1999 film She Saw That, which also depicts a relatively problematic performance that these high schoolers make, and Freddie Prinze Jr. as Barry is like put up to the test of cultivating a romantic relationship with this woman who's a performance artist. And it's very clear that performance artists are social outcasts, that cool people don't get it and they don't want to. And finally, another kind of key example happens in this episode of Sex and the City. Some may recognize it. Where like Carrie goes to the gallery where Charlotte works, and they're both kind of complaining because, as we all know, performance art is also boring, and they're just watching this woman sit there. And we also discover after Carrie makes a rude remark that it's the domain of women who don't brush their hair, which also guilty as charged, I guess. And what's also super interesting about this is that this example was basically an exact recreation of a work by Marina Abramovich from just like a year previous that I'm sure she participated in. But anyway, so these were these kinds of like horrible misconceptions that I had about the form. And so when I was in art school, I'm pretty sure this is like one of the only images I have of myself in art school, clashed by Indie Slee's Instagram account. When I was in school, I was just like, oh, I'm an artist, so I'm a painter. And then it took like 1 month into undergrad painting class to realize I'm definitely not a painter. And so I tried all these different things, none of which were performance or video. And yeah, that's what I was doing. And so I started making videos just like kind of on the side in my spare time. One of the very first videos that's not very good that I made is centered around the TV show The O.C., which I don't know if anyone is familiar with, but it's this show from the early 2000s about these teenagers that are played by adults that kind of plays with all these very archetypal personalities. And so I had just like printed these faces and cut the mouths out and re-edited some audio from the show, and then tried to kind of reenact it just like in my apartment. That was my roommate's heads, lighting a cigarette, and using like as old consumer grade video cameras that I'm pretty sure my uncle who was here had used that like handed down to me. But yeah, basically just like using whatever I had on hand to try to like create something that progressively kind of flies off the rails. But I do feel like there's little seeds in here that carry through to like what I do now. And other similar videos that I made also at home. This one it takes so long to explain this, and now it's like 2025 and no one knows what like any of this stuff is. But like CSI Miami was a TV show that was very popular in the mid-aughts, and it had this running gag where this like horrible actor would say like a really terrible line and then put his sunglasses on, and then that song screams. And so this was reenacting that opening over and over and over again, but just with inanimate objects in my poem that had about the same acting capacity. And another very because these are all so similar in my opinion now. So this is a video of a cow windsock that my family has, but it was overlaid with this monologue from the film American Beauty, where this character is talking about how he saw this like plastic bag in the wind, and then you had to videotape it because nothing else could capture like what that is, and how it was like this overblown, profound moment. And like I really like that monologue because it's like quite bad, but then also I feel deeply connected to it. But yeah, so anyways, these kind of common themes here of just like finding whatever is available on hand, using whatever tools I had, trying to like think through these not great or complex ideas by any means. That was the kind of thing I was working on when I got to attend a residency at the Bemis Center that was about this theme of experimental comedy. And so to me, that was like, okay, yeah, that's been one through line for me. I've always been interested in this idea of humor or jokes in artwork. And so it was led by this American artist, Michael Portnoy, who is best known for this incident at the 1998 Grammy Awards. I mean, like, Michael's done Documenta also, but this is what he is known for. And unfortunately, the camera kind of moves away when he's forcibly removed from the stage by security. But I remember feeling like, okay, I think this is someone I really want to learn from, because I've never watching that and being like a child also, but also being like, what was that? But then the thing I didn't understand about this residency was that it was a performance-based residency. And so while I was there, everyone had to perform for the group every week for 2 months. And so I was like, okay, I guess I'm just I'll see what happens. And I think I had just had a really productive studio visit with Michael one day where he said well, what would it look like if you just did exactly what you wanted to in a performance? And I was talking with somebody about this yesterday in a studio visit, that why wasn't that so obvious that you can just do exactly what you want to do and see what that looks like? But I feel like sometimes for many of us earlier in our practices, we don't give ourselves permission for some reason to do something that simple. But in doing that, I kind of started to realize that things were working in a new way that hadn't been working before. And, I could bring in these different things that were interesting to me, like writing and dancing and moving and sound, and still keep working with inanimate objects just from wherever. And so this is where I really for the first time started working in this way and felt something new was happening for me. The other people who were there were doing all kinds of weird, different stuff. But two of the people who were also there worked collaboratively as a duo called Life of a Craphead, which is Amy Chunyan Lam and John Pham Curley. They don't work together anymore, but they were there, and they also were feeling okay, so we're all making this kind of weird work that doesn't really fit in a gallery necessarily, or we don't really foresee many galleries being necessarily interested in this without knowing more about it. And it absolutely is not meant for a comedy club. So they decided, okay, let's create a platform to keep doing this. And that's how this series called Doored in Toronto came to be, which would sometimes take place in this DIY venue in Kensington Market with these theater curtains that came out of the trash. But then other times it would happen at the Art Gallery of Ontario, because I think in total there were 30 editions of it over 5 years. And the basic premise was there would be 7 performers performing 7 minutes of material each, and the admission cost $7, which was very not super convenient as far as amounts of money to pay out a door. And so there would be all kinds of different work that people would present there. So Laura McCoy is a Toronto artist who would work with these more kind of provisional materials and activate them in different ways. But then there would also be work by artists like Aisha Sasha John, who's a dancer and a poet, who would often just go up and improvise. All of this would be live streamed, so if you couldn't attend, you could watch it from home. And I remember John was being like, yeah, it's like Saturday Night Live, and we have these different feeds, and someone will like edit the feed live. It'll be just like Saturday Night Live, and what it looked like was this, because all the cameras were really shitty. But it looks great, right? And then also like tons of people were tuned in and watched from home. Who wanted to see what was up. And there would also be an intermission sculpture at every show, and the cameras would then like focus on the sculpture during the intermission so that everyone could see that, like this work by Tal Lewis, or there might sometimes be something installed in the room, like this sculpture by Connor Crawford. But this was like really fundamental to me. This like community built event series was like such a integral part of like my ability to keep making this work and having an audience to present it to. And so what that meant was I just had lots of chances to keep like trying things in public and to keep trying to like develop this like artistic language or performative language, I guess. And like continuing to work with different props and different objects, trying to work through as many different ways to like work with something within this like constraint, the 7 minutes, which was really kind of useful to me. And so things look similar, but with some variations. So that's a lot of stills, right? That doesn't really like explain what time-based medium looks like. So here is a small excerpt of what some of the work that came out of that time looked like, or was like in real time.
When avocados go bad, they taste like scented hand cream. But when I go bad, there's no indication. The badness is imperceptible. Still, my brain is stewing somewhere bad. In a bad cream all its own, stuck with its worst thoughts. I look at a photograph and I think, I hope that little baby was an accident. That baby is bad for the environment. Have you ever had a thought so appalling you actually look around to make sure no one is looking at you in case they can tell, and you will no longer be permitted to live amongst your community? Who goes there and wakes me from my peaceful slumber? Be gone! Get away from here! Hear my awful bell and be gone! What do you want from me? you not, but still I implore you. Get away from here.
Oh, hi. I'm here to talk to you about a little spoon you can put on your keychain. So that's just a little sample. But that's sort of what it's like, right? So these short scenes that switch unexpectedly and pretty abruptly, and there's no kind of continuity between them, but I'm kind of hoping that in this, like, relentless experience of them, you start to draw different connections or contrast and compare them and start to perceive like a network of meaning, let's say, that kind of emerges from it. So a lot of that also like has a very specific look to it, but because I'm somebody who kind of came up through the world of visual arts, was also trying to think if there's a way to like create more complex visual settings for some of this. So some earlier experiments with that involved like working in a theater, which is really great because everyone can like see and hear you clearly, which doesn't always happen when you try to do this kind of thing in an art gallery. But the other issue with that is it has like all of the aesthetic qualities of theater, which is to me a very different kind of history to engage with or world to be working in. So I also don't really feel like that's the best setting for some of this either. Another early experiment, I got to work in the AGO for a proposed performance. And so I asked if I could situate it in front of this long wall of all these Lauren Harris paintings because they're all very similar, kind of like mountain scapels, creating this like theatrical background. And then I also felt like maybe there was like material there to riff off of about like the group of seven and these ideas about their relationship to the land in Canada and this idea of, these like guys who discovered this land and kind of like, thinking that people coming there might have some familiarity with that to like with which to kind of play off of. But ultimately, I do feel this was not a very good performance. So not just move on. And another strategy I was thinking about was like being able to do something very temporary in like a group exhibition setting, and so like creating this sort of proscenium through a very tight spotlight that would only exist for this one night, and then it would go back to being, kind of the regular exhibition, and then in this way, different objects could come in and out of this frame in the corner of the gallery. At some point, it seemed interesting to put a TV on its side in the performance and have that to work with because that added like a different visual element to play off of. And like could work in different ways about something. And then in 2016, I was very fortunate to do a production residency here at Western Front, and I had certain objects that in this case, one in particular, I won't spoil which one it is. You might be able to spot it. But that like really demanded like more space to be able to use it. And so, a lot of the time I had been ready to just like make do with whatever context I had. And so this was like a really nice chance to try to, think about what would I do if I could work a bit bigger. And in terms of kind of like thematics of this, I had read this essay about how in the Korn song, Freak on a Leash, I also don't know if anyone's familiar, there's this one part where Jonathan Davis breaks down into this sort of scatting-like mode, and I had read this essay about like how that's like he's articulating meaninglessness in this section, and I thought the essay was like totally bullshit, but I really liked this idea of like this articulation of meaninglessness, and so that's kind of where many of these ideas were starting from, and then can branched out from there.
How about we give this guy a rest for once?
And I also like tested something with that guy, probably like 40 to 50 times, and then on this one time it actually reacted completely differently, and it happened every time in the past. But that is the thrill of live work. Sometimes things don't go to plan, but no one probably knows but yourself. Kind of extending on that, other kinds. I've made somewhat similar looking work, I guess you could say, including this one from 2019. Scream if you want to go faster is what they shout on some carnival rides. So like this idea being, you know, some people start screaming and then it starts going faster. And then presumably more people start screaming because it's going too fast. And in my mind, that would like create a sort of self-perpetuating loop of disaster, which is kind of like sometimes how things have felt in recent years, I guess. And so this performance was thinking through some of that, the ideas here, and all of it also came from like visually, it was entirely based on this t-shirt. There's this product called Meat Bar, a very short-lived energy bar product made from meat that was shelf-stable. Sadly, this product failed, but I had long been like obsessed with its very existence. And then a friend found this shirt in the thrift store. And I just like could not stop thinking about how badly I wanted to become the meat bar and like what a meat bar would say and do. So if you're curious, you can watch that. And since then, I've been trying to think more about ways of developing possibly even like more of a set piece, if it makes sense, or like if that's workable or usable for me, and also like trying to think of like how to make these spaces that are a little bit off, that are partly domestic but partly like not at all, like this towel rod like in a bathroom almost, and then it also doubled as a secondary video installation that I think was not so good, but just fun. And so this performance I made working with this curator Sylvie Fortin, who was working on an exhibition around this theme of hospitality and the body, and so it was like very generative to kind of talk through it with her and think about these different ideas of like, okay, well, like, my body's in all this stuff that I do, so like what are the different things that my body itself hosts, like in different ways, whatever that might mean. And then also thinking like, what are there like gestures or actions that I can do that would cause your body to host like a feeling, whether that's like cringy or creepy in different ways. And so part of that involved making this fur-covered skeleton, which was a bit of a pandemic project, we could say, hot gluing fake fur onto a anatomical skeleton model, which I found very satisfying, and when it took a really long time. So when I finished it, I was like, oh, I'm going to post it on the internet because I would like attention. Because that's also something that's an undercurrent in my work, I guess. I like attention. And so it's like, great. It did get attention. Not all of it was positive, I would say, but it just kept like going further and further far. It ended up made it to Rented at some point. Again, just the reviews were not great. At some point, the Dutch got involved, and even at another point, like a few years later, I found out someone made like a fan version, and they sent it to me, and that was like really great. But so now it just like has its own life, completely divorced from me entirely. But like it lives on through the internet, and I think that's really nice because I've taken so much from the internet, and now I feel I've given back. It's community culture in my own way, and so I feel it's like that wasn't it to happen. More recently, this is maybe another example of like trying to work out a way to work with this like pseudo-domestic, pseudo something else kind of space. And then also trying to see if when it's not in this performance mode, if it could become something else, as with this like group of chairs that's being sort of proselytized to by this other leader chair. Yeah, and so sometimes when I do a talk, I'll do like performances during it because I get very nervous to talk in performances. I get less nervous. But because on Saturday I will be doing a performance, you can come see that instead. You might be wondering, what can you expect there? Here, I'll let you know. Alternate universes, a pigeon, the feelings chart, scam phone calls, logger, Benson Boone, whales, 7-second brainwave trick, Vanderpump Rules, crystals, Nestle Alpine Light, manipulating time, weapons, Wi-Fi amulets, a baby king, and much more. So if you'd like to know more, please join us 2 floors up on Saturday at 4 o'clock. You may also be saying now, you actually didn't talk about videos at all. I thought you made those. Well, guess what? I'm not finished yet. So while I was making this work, I also started kind of wondering, like, okay, is there a way to like make some of these strategies also work if I am mediating them differently, like working with video? Because I also love, like, as a viewer, I love videos. I love videos as a medium. And so my first kind of stab at that in this kind of new post-performance part of my practice was this video called Asking for a Friend from 2013. And I had just asked, this was at this place called X Space in Toronto, which is run by OCAP. And I just asked if I could like go in overnight one time when the gallery was empty and like have access to whatever was in their storage closet. And I had no idea what I was going to do with that, but I just wanted to like experiment and see what could happen. And so, and I also like, felt very awkward still about all this stuff. So I just filmed this entirely on my own, would just like set up a camera, hope for the best and make these gestures, and then ended up re-editing them together and kind of to bring all these disparate gestures together. Each one is edited with a voiceover kind of asking a different question related to that gesture. And then I kind of expanded on this idea of like, you can film in a gallery. But this memory foam video was shot at the MSVU Art Gallery in Halifax. And I can't remember why there's a poster of these women dentists. That was important to me for some reason. And so, yeah, I had, again, all of these kind of different objects, working with them and creating these scenes kind of in the same space in which people would then later watch them. And this gallery has some like very unique architectural features. And so, yeah, I wanted to try to, expand this visual world by kind of working with those. And then I was like, no more galleries. So I was trying to think of like, is there a way to conceive of space in a similar way to like an everyday object, right? And so to me, the kind of best example of that in the world is maybe like a hotel room where you have this like stack on stack of the exact same room over and over and over again. And there are these different features to hotel rooms that most of us are, kind of familiar with. So this has, all of these, like this person struggling in this room, and everything is blue, and eventually even the time's blue. So in my former life, former life means like before this prison, like 2009 to 2012. I worked in a day job, in an office job for a wholesale cookware manufacturer, which making like boxes and fry pan sleeves, which was horribly depressing. And but the great thing about it was that sometimes I would get sent to the International Housewares Show in Chicago, Illinois, where you would go see like what's the newest stuff in housewares for the upcoming year. But for me, the best part of that was there was always a Pantone booth where they would explain like what the colors for the next year were going to be. And so since then, I've been very obsessed with the convention of Pantone's color of the year, which is every year there's one color. And so in the year 2016, they were like, guess what? This year, it's actually two colors as one color. And I just really liked kind of the overall absurdity of commodifying something as like basic as color itself. But with this, they were like, it's 2016, it's going to be all about peace, it's going to be all about harmony, it's going to be like gender harmony as well. Like, if you're welcome, we solved that on me. But I don't know if you guys remember the year 2016. It did not feel particularly harmonious or peaceful to me. And so, the whole exercise was like patently very absurd. Also, what happens in this production cycle is that when 2017 starts, all of the products manufactured in the previous year's colors go on a deep discount, so you can sure buy a lot of them at a really good price. So that's kind of where the basis of this video, Every Room is a Waiting Room, is coming from. And so these were kind of the ideas I was working with, and then also trying to think about, for me, cinematic representations of like the loneliest spaces in the universe. And to me, that's like the room at the end of 2001, A Space Odyssey. But in this case, has been edited to have the Pantone promotional images, picture place paintings. I think that's just what I'll say, and we'll just watch a clip of that. Sephora, my mother's name. This must be my mother's lipstick. Maybe she didn't know it would come back in fashion. Maybe she concealed it for some other reason. In any case, it doesn't matter. I'll do what I like. Baby boy, baby. Evil.
what you say. Just what we need. You decided this, what you say. What did you say?
And it's also produced, what I would argue is, the best press image of me of all time. Which I have yet to use. The last example that I will look at is a video called My Crops Are Drying, But My Body Persists, that I finished, I believe, finished editing it at the beginning of March of 2020. So some of the metaphorical ideas in it became a little uninteresting very quickly thereafter. I'll talk about in a second. This video exists in these two different planes. One is like a lot more sort of tighter, closer up, and it's composed of a lot of colors that you would find in my own body, like these peaches and beiges. And the other is in this very, very white, very, very empty room, but that's still like got all of these very decorative flourishes, but none of them are actually utilitarian. They're all just for show. I got renedicted out of my live work studio space in 2018, and since then I can't afford a studio in Toronto. So this like closer up section was filmed in my small apartment with my cat nearby, and then this other space we rented, this what is essentially I think like an influencer like photo space that kind of exists nowhere, and this is my partner Paul, who films most of my videos and collaborates with me on them. Many of the objects in this more macro setting are kind of bodily adjacent, like these earplugs and these fingernails and fake teeth, or this like mouth expander. Some of this was coming from the inspiration of a meme known as cursed images. I don't know if anyone here is familiar with this type of internet image making culture. So these are two very kind of more chill examples, I would say, of what cursed images are. Google at your own risk. Gia Tolentino in an essay kind of describes a cursed image as something where like nothing apparently like dangerous is happening in the photo or the image, but there's still this like sense of foreboding or creepiness that is created somehow by this atmosphere. So you have something that seems pretty benign, bread or beans, but then in the way that the image exists in some other aspects, like makes you feel a bit creeped out and uncomfortable and off-putting. So to me, that is kind of like, you know, there's, or at least like in Ontario, when there's a really hot day at the end of October, it's like, oh cool, it's like 24 degrees, that feels nice. And then you're like, that doesn't feel nice at all, actually. This is really kind of alarming and upsetting. So part of it, I was thinking, making this connection, between these sorts of things that felt like they were happening. So some of the images are taken more directly from cursed images. Some that were popular at the time are shaving cream through different holes of things, and that in doing this, the kind of affective space that's created is unsettling. Some of the parts of this video are maybe more like or less unsettling, but involving still like food. Or like these hot dog fingers that slide down this decorative hand and leave a sort of snail trail of not sure what they're moving in though. So, this kind of like food that is not sustaining. This is like a $300 moisturizer, be used on slices of white bread. The metaphors that were not suddenly not interesting were like, there's some ideas about like sickness, coming through that I was like, oh, okay, well now the world is like more in our face in a different way, like we're contending with a very different kind of sickness right now. This is actually feels a bit off. Nevertheless, a document. So there's this white bread, there's the bigger white bread, and then there's this figure who is me, kind of like trying to awkwardly navigate this empty white room, and throughout there are these kind of different voiceovers of the same persona, who's sometimes self-reflexive, sometimes insightful, sometimes very deluded or delusional, sometimes very profoundly misguided, and it kind of dealing with these feelings of like isolation, maybe overconsumption, environmental collapse, and all these other different kind of conditions I feel that come from living in capitalism. And so ultimately at the end, this is what happens. I was also realizing lately that in the context of like when this is exhibited, the shorthand for this suit, which gets kind of installed alongside the video, everyone ends up calling it the meat suit instead of the muscle suit for some reason. But I think that is very apt. So yeah, on that note, I guess, does anyone have any questions about all of that?